All right. Good morning, everyone. It is just after 10 o'clock. If you guys can take a seat, that would be fantastic.
I think as you're presenting, maybe can say that even on the last one, that we're going to remove the mask while we're presenting, but we're well separated and stuff like that, so we cover our bases about people complaining or saying that we're not unsafe.
That's fine.
Because we really are. So I'm gonna say that when I start.
Good morning, everyone. If we can take a seat, that would be great so we can get moving. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Katie. I'm the planner with Hendry County. This is sort of our reintroduction to the Montura land use study. And I'd like to thank everyone that came this morning and that's listening online or viewing the live stream online, and everyone from Central Water District and all of the county commissioners that are here.
Her mic isn't. It's on. Just move it closer. Oh, we have to let her interpret.
Thank you.
So at this point, I will introduce Waldrop Engineering, who has been our consultants on this study, and Fred Drovlik, who's sort of leading them all with this project.
Por ahorita estamos haciendo las introducciones. Can everybody hear me?
Good.
It's taped down.
Go ahead and try again.
Por ahorita estamos haciendo las introducciones. ¿Me escuchan todos? Okay. Estamos haciendo ahorita las introducciones de las personas que van a estar presentes llevando a cabo esta junta. Tenemos al joven Fred y a la señora Kathy que nos van a estar dando más información.
Okay. Now me?
Yep.
All right. Just for everybody that's either watching live or I'm going to take my mask off during the presentation, but I want everybody to know that we are very separated and taking every precaution that we can, but during the presentation, because the amount of people that can attend live today here are obviously going to be limited compared to the amount of people that we believe will watch it online later or live right now. So we want that audio to be nice and clear.
Por ahorita, para las personas que nos están mirando a través del sistema de internet, les quiero decir que me estoy quitando la mascarilla cuando voy a hacer una presentación, solamente para decirles que las personas que están presentes hay espacio limitado, pero aseguren que manténganse asegurados que todos estamos manteniendo esa distancia sana.
All right, today the agenda is fairly simple. So we are going to go over the land use study in a quick review because it's been, the last time we met together, it was late February, and the world has changed since then a little bit. So we've had quite a break. So I'm going to go back over the land use study, review a little bit what a land use study is and the purpose of this particular one. I'm going to do a brief overview of the survey results that went out. And then the last time we met, we did a community mapping exercise, and that's going to be the new information from for this presentation will be the results from that mapping exercise.
Por ahorita les quiero informar a todos que vamos a revisar solamente lo que estudiamos en la audiencia pasada, vamos a hacer una revisión y claro, desde la última audiencia que tuvimos o la junta que tuvimos en febrero, el mundo ha cambiado de una manera drástica. Por ahorita, como les digo, les vamos a informar sobre los cambios y cuál va a ser ese propósito de esa encuesta que se hizo. Si se recuerdan, la vez pasada hicimos un ejercicio de mapeo y ahorita le vamos a dar esos resultados.
Thank you. There will be a revised project schedule, either on the agenda as you came in, you received that, and those project schedule will also be posted. It's in this presentation, and then we'll go over the revised project schedule at the end. So I want to kick off with
Por ahorita les voy a
Waiting.
decir que todo lo que estamos mostrando en pantalla lo van a poder revisar para las personas que están presentes, obtuvieron una copia de estas planillas que vamos a estar mirando.
The first slide shows two things, the boundary of the Central County Water Control District and then what is actually Montura Ranch Estates.
La primera pantalla que estamos mirando, la fotografía en pantalla, es aproximadamente cuáles son los linderos en el condado de Central County y también en Montura Estates.
The yellow boundary is a little over almost 17 square miles, and that is the Central County Water Control District boundary.
Por ahorita el lindero amarillo que pueden observar mide aproximadamente 17.1 millas cuadradas y está marcado por amarillo en el condado de Central County.
And within that is the red boundary that would be what is considered Montura Ranch Estates.
Marcado en rojo va a poder observar que es lo que está delineado como Montura Estates.
However, this land use study encompasses all of the Central County Water Control District. We're looking at all that land.
Sin embargo, mirándolos todos en conjunto, los dos en conjunto, es lo que se detalla de Montura Ranch.
Some of the population and demographic information that was in the prior studies are not on this, and not in this study, but I do encourage everybody to go and all those files and presentations are available in several different ways. They're on the Henry County website. We uploaded a new design for that yesterday, and so all the prior presentations, files, and research are all available online.
Por ahorita algunas demostraciones demográficas y todos los archivos no están presentes actualmente en los documentos que tenemos presentes, pero usted puede regresarse al sitio de internet y revisar todo en el condado de Henry a través de ese sitio de internet, y hemos agregado unas cosas ayer.
If you've signed in prior studies, or if you provide us your email via the contact information at the end of this presentation, we will send you out links, files, whatever you need as you request it.
Si usted se inscribe y nos da su correo electrónico y tenemos su información de contacto, nosotros le podemos mandar archivos y cualquier cosa que usted esté solicitando.
So the quick overview of some of the demographics, we figure out that Montura Ranch Estates now has an approximate population of probably a little bit over 4,300 people. I know Margaret Embledge shared with me recently that the amount of housing permits that were applied for this year was over 60. So Montura Ranch is continuing to grow and actually seems like it's growing a little bit faster pace than it has maybe the last decade or so. So it is, and that is the reason, one of the primary reasons for this study is that Montura Ranch is going to change, and it can change a lot. Right now, the area is really only built out just over 20%. So if you think about another 80% of the population that can be added over the next 10, 20 years, that is a significant change into the lifestyle of what you experience in Montura Ranch Estates. And so we want to look at that now and get ahead of the ball and make good changes that help that community to grow the way you would want it, rather than just how it might happen by default.
Por ahorita tenemos más o menos de la encuesta que se usó la vez pasada, son 4,300 personas que actualmente están viviendo, y me acaba de informar la señora Margaret Embledge que se acaban de aplicar 60 nuevos permisos para casa o construcción de casas. Así es que Montura está creciendo de una manera muy rápidamente, y por ahorita es el motivo de que queremos hacer este estudio comprensivo. Y si tomamos en cuenta que solamente el 20% de Montura está actualmente habitado, eso quedaría que queda el 80% todavía en el transcurso de 10 a 20 años, y que existe este crecimiento, que es por eso que estamos implementando estos cambios, tomando en cuenta de que queremos estar al pendiente o más allá de lo que pueda suceder en este tiempo que viene.
The next slide shows there's two foundational pieces that are regulatory through Henry County. And Montura Ranch Estates is part of the Central County Water Control District, but is also part of Henry County.
Aunque Montura y Henry County estén un poco dividido, el Montura como quiera forma parte del condado de Henry.
And while Central County Water Control District can tax and take care of the canals and roads and conservation areas, Henry County implements the regulations such as future land use and zoning.
Por ahorita, aunque la imposición de impuestos cubre los canales, las carreteras y esta área demográfica, entonces podemos mirar que las taxas van a estar incluidas para mantenimiento de esos terrenos.
The Montura Ranch future land use category is called residential pre-existing rural estates. It's a fairly broad category that was made just for Montura Ranch years ago. It's the foundation of what you can do with your land. So it says in a very broad and general terms what uses can be placed on the land. In general, it's allowed single-family residential, and general and high-intensity commercial is also allowed as far as the future land use goes. Whether it's permitted in zoning or not is the next layer that I'll discuss. It allows a density of 1 unit per acre and a floor area ratio of 0.25.
Por ahorita estamos hablando de que Montura Estates está designado en viviendas existentes rurales, lo que quiere decir que nos permite el 75% que está designado. Por ahorita existen muchas propiedades que solamente tienen una unidad por parcela. Y estamos hablando sobre las diferentes densidades. Lo generalmente está diciendo para diferentes usos, que se puede usar estos terrenos para diferentes usos, comercial de alta intensidad y también de viviendas de solamente una por acre.
One of the terms I threw out there was floor area ratio, and it's really a fairly simple measure of intensity of commercial uses, so any non-residential uses, it's a measure of the intensity.
Por ahorita he mencionado el término FAR, que es la porción de área en el estado de Florida que es diseñado como comercial.
Basically, if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you can build 2,500 square feet of a building on it. That's what a floor area ratio is. It's a multiplier.
Por ahorita, como se define eso, es que si usted tiene una parcela de 10,000 acres, puede poner un edificio en la cantidad de 2,500 pies cuadrados.
So part of this study is to look at what we would call one of the planning tools are called overlays. And a future land use overlay can encompass a specific area within Montura Ranch and allow or apply different regulations to certain types of land uses in certain types of areas. So picture it as a small area overlay just right on top of this map that would allow some different things and some unique things to happen as desired by the planning community, as planners and as the community desires. And so that's part of what we will be looking at.
Por ahorita este estudio de lo que estamos mirando es simplemente, generalmente se mira qué es la cantidad de los terrenos, las medidas de los terrenos y lo que la comunidad quiere que se ponga en esos terrenos.
So keep that in mind because we're going to go over the community mapping exercise results, and this will make more sense when you see some of those results. Then you can start to see how some overlays in certain areas will make sense.
Por ahorita tomen en mente y vamos a mostrarles ese ejercicio de mapeo que hicimos en la junta pasada para que puedan mirar y se va a poder apreciar más o entender más de lo que fue los resultados de ese ejercicio.
So in the future land use category, the huge majority of Montura Ranch estates is for residential use. It's that pre-existing rural. This, on top of that, it's only 5% commercial. So now, go ahead.
Por ahorita, como estamos mirando y les dije previamente que la mayoría de los terrenos en Montura están ocupados primariamente residenciales, lo que quiere decir que solamente hay 5% de comercio.
Now, zoning is the part of the Henry County Land Development Code that implements the future land use category and allows specific uses to be on specific lots.
Por ahorita la zonificación de Montura es lo que permite qué tipo de terreno o comercios se van a implementar o se van a construir en estos terrenos de Montura.
It also sets development regulations and parameters for those uses that would be allowed, like setbacks, height, intensities, those density, number of units. It sets those kind of regulations in real specified manner.
Por supuesto, hay reglamentos donde nos van a definir cuánto comercio, la altura, las medidas y todo eso va a estar debidamente reglamentado.
Now, zoning balances or does its best attempt to balance private property rights with mutual protection for landowners. And this is an important part. I know everybody wants to do, it's your land and you want to do what you want to do with it, right? And have that private right to do those things. However, there's a balance of, well, if I do one thing, is it going to harm a neighbor, and vice versa? So you want those mutual protections, and that's the balance that we try to strike with zoning.
El balance de que vamos a hablar ahora es sobre si usted es un propietario en Montura y se establece un negocio a su lado, vamos a fijarnos cómo es que le dañaría a los vecinos al poner algún negocio. Y debe de haber un balance porque usted tiene derechos privados como propietario de su propiedad que usted tiene. Y por eso hay diferentes partes para asegurar que nadie sale dañado.
The large majority of Montura Ranch Estates is zoned for rural residential farm, which is just a residential use. And everything except 5% is zoned either residential or agricultural, and most of the agriculture is in the reservoir, the Central County Water Control District reservoir area. It leaves less than 5% for any other use other than agriculture or residential.
Por ahorita la gran cantidad de propiedades que existe en Montura son áreas residenciales, donde quedaría el 5% que son menos de lugares de agricultura. Así es que por ahorita lo que se refiere a RRF es de zonas residenciales.
So part of what's evident is that if Montura Ranch were to continue to grow without any changes, the community could be 95% residential or agricultural with almost no supporting infrastructure of non-residential uses.
Por ahorita, si Montura sigue creciendo a la medida que va creciendo ahorita, lo que quiere decir que el 95% de los terrenos que quedan por construir sería, y si sigue creciendo la infraestructura, quedaría menos del 5% de los lugares de agricultura.
I'm sure that's not new news to those of you that make that your home. So you have to travel for nearly every use other than where you want to stay and live for the day, So to get to do anything else other than store, gas, hardware, medical, schools, you have to travel outside of Montura Ranch Estates, and the long-term sustainability of that creates a little bit of an unhealthy community, and we want to help bring balance to that with your help.
Para establecer este balance en la comunidad, por ahorita nos podemos dar cuenta que las personas que actualmente están viviendo en el área de Montura se están limitados a servicios médicos, gasolinerías, escuelas, iglesias, y si tenemos ese crecimiento del 95% de los terrenos que quedan, habría una dificultad porque la mayoría de las personas tiene que salir fuera para acudir a esos servicios.
So the purpose of this land use study is to look at 4 broad categories and to bring them together.
Así es que el propósito de esta audiencia es para juntar todas esas categorías y poderlas unir.
Land uses such as residential, agricultural, commercial, industrial, civic, public, all the different uses that are part of a healthy community.
Así es que parte de este estudio, de este plan comprensivo, es para poder establecer no solamente lugares cívicos públicos, pero todo lo que es necesario en esta comunidad.
We're going to look at the growth and density, how dense is it allowed to grow out and how fast is it growing now and how do you want it to grow in the future?
Por ahorita la densidad y el crecimiento vamos a mirar, como dijimos previamente, a largo plazo.
We want to look at compatibility. So is one type of use next to another type of use okay? So is it okay to have a heavy industrial right beside a residential home? That kind of compatibility of uses.
Vamos a medir la compatibilidad, lo que quiere decir, si usted tiene un lugar industrial al lado de su casa, ¿cómo es que le va a beneficiar o cómo es que le va a dañar? Debe haber un balance.
So based on community feedback through surveys, mapping exercises, and other information that we've gathered, we want to look at the protections through those regulations and encouragements in the right places for those other uses.
A través de los ejercicios de mapeo que se hizo en las juntas pasadas, queremos mirar para su protección dónde es que ustedes quieren tener estos lugares ubicados.
So part of this process is to help educate public on all these new terms and the different ways that land is regulated in your community.
Parte de la audiencia o de esta junta, perdón, que te estamos teniendo es para informarles y para que ustedes se familiaricen con los términos de los que vamos a estar usando.
And then produce the zoning and future land use regulations that will allow some of the community to form the way the input and research that we did comes together and points in a certain direction.
Y parte de la encuesta y de las sugerencias que ha dado la comunidad es cómo vamos a establecer las reglas en cómo es que vamos a llevar a cabo este proyecto.
So we approach this in a couple ways. First, we've done now 4 community meetings, and then we also sent out a community survey.
Hemos hecho diferentes encuestas en la comunidad. Una fue enviada por correo y otra hicimos en la comunidad.
Initially, we just handed it out during a community meeting and allowed it to be picked up at the Central County Water Control District office, but the response was lower than we wanted.
La primera vez que hicimos esta encuesta se les entregó esa encuesta, ya sea que se les haya entregado o ustedes pudieron haberlo pasado a levantar a la oficina y ahí en la oficina, y la respuesta actualmente no hubo mucha respuesta de la comunidad.
With the cooperation of the commissioners with the Central County Water Control District and the Planning Department, they decided to put in the effort of mailing out almost 4,400 surveys to every landowner, take on that expense because the community input was that important.
Cuando la comunidad se hizo presente, se les pidió o pidieron que se les enviara por correo a cada propietario y se les envió ejemplares de esas encuestas de cerca de 4,400 a cada propietario.
So then the result was that we did receive back just over 10% of all the surveys, and that's probably a little bit above of a national average of what a mail-out survey would bring back. So the community did a good job in taking interest in the future of their community.
De las 4,400 encuestas que se mandaron, recibimos el 10% de resultados de las personas que actualmente tomaron el tiempo, llenaron esa encuesta y es un poquito más del promedio nacional.
So the survey results summary, this was a page that was the last page of the presentation. There, in the last community meetings that we had, there are slides on every single question. Pie charts, results, number of responses for each and every question. So you can go back and look at those or request those from us and we'll send those out.
Nuevamente, si usted pide cualquier información de las juntas previas que se han hecho y usted está pidiendo cualquier información, con gusto se le va a enviar.
We asked general questions like describe what you liked, what your concerns were in the community. Overall, the results came back and described the community as residents identify the area as peaceful, rural and quiet, and they love the open space, love the sense of community.
Por ahorita de los resultados que recibimos de estas encuestas que ustedes entregaron o regresaron, se les pidió una descripción general, el por qué les gusta el área de Montura. Muchos identificaron el área como pacífica, es rural y que tiene, sobre todo la comunidad, y que tiene terrenos amplios.
And likewise, some of the favorite things went in line with that. Tranquility, the quiet, the trees, the spacious country character.
Por ahorita también las cosas favoritas que les gustó sobre esta comunidad era la tranquilidad, el bienestar, los árboles, que los terrenos son espaciosos y el carácter de la comunidad de ser rural, una área rural.
On the other side of things, there were some concerns. Roads always come up. You know, everybody wants better roads and better paved roads to drive on. Tough to find places to work and shop in Montura Ranch. Crime, overall safety, stray dogs, shooting guns in places that maybe aren't considered quite as safe as others.
Y por supuesto también en la comunidad hubo algunas preocupaciones, como siempre, la condición de las carreteras es una preocupación que tenía la comunidad y una de las cosas que tenían también era que no hay lugares donde hacer sus compras, donde trabajar, tampoco no había muchos lugares de empleo. y que el crimen, sobre todo la seguridad, de que había perros callejeros y que había gente que dispara pistolas.
So the improvements that were suggested went along with the concerns. More paved roads and places to shop and work. Access to certain services such as schools and healthcare were a significant result.
Una de las mejorías que ustedes les gustaría mirar en la comunidad sería que las carreteras estuvieran más empavimentadas, lugares donde hacer sus compras y tener acceso a los servicios tales como escuelas, centros médicos y servicios a diario comunes. Y un lugar, tiene aquí, no mencionó el señor, pero aquí tiene otra cosa de tener mejor, más actividad policial.
So at the end, some of the land uses that were encouraged that were desirable to be within Montura Ranch were schools, medical, grocery and convenience stores for those daily needs, and farmers markets, and then to a huge degree, better, or not better, but just more recreation and conservation areas were desirable.
En una de las cosas que ustedes estaban pidiendo también era que hubiera escuelas, centros médicos, como dijimos previamente, tiendas para comprar sus víveres y también tener unos lugares donde se puede vender frutas, áreas de recreación y conservación.
And little off script here, I want to add that Montura Ranch, when it was formed, it was a pre-platted area that was just laid out really to make the most money they could. I mean, it was, quarter-acre lots just over and over again.
I'm sorry, would you be able to repeat that, please? The air conditioner kicked in and I could not hear
sure.
everything.
When it was originally platted, it was done by a corporation that didn't necessarily consider a balanced community. They considered sales of units.
Thank you. Por ahorita, como les había dicho originalmente, cuando empezó el crecimiento de Montura, fueron las propiedades medidas y la compañía que hizo estas medidas no tomó en cuenta el crecimiento y establecer ese balance en la comunidad.
People now say they love the spaciousness, the quiet, the trees, and the rural character of Montura Ranch Estates, and I agree.
Por ahorita yo estaría de acuerdo que las personas han dicho que sus cosas favoritas de vivir aquí en Montura es la tranquilidad, de tener los árboles y que los terrenos son espaciosos y el carácter de ser una comunidad rural.
However, with the pre-platted nature and the quarter-acre lots, with nearly 6,200 lots within Montura Ranch Estates, that community character could change significantly over time as build-out occurs.
Así como va pasando el tiempo, tenemos aproximadamente 6,200 parcelas que todavía no están bajo construcción o construidas, y así es que vamos a mirar un cambio en el futuro.
So I know people don't love change, and some change, especially from a government level, can be scary sometimes. But what we're here to do is to take an early look at what can happen to Montura Ranch Estates. With your input, then adjust it now so that you get what you want as you continue to live there.
Por ahorita yo sé que vemos muchas personas quizás que no nos gusta el cambio, no nos podemos adaptar al cambio, y mucho menos cuando es un cambio gubernamental. Pero por ahorita lo que estamos tratando de hacer es prevenir lo que puede pasar en un futuro y este estudio de estos terrenos.
Without some regulatory help, the list of things that people loved and want to see in Montura Ranch might not be able to happen.
Sin algunas regulaciones, quizás las cosas que las personas en la comunidad quieran mirar, esos cambios no van a suceder sin que ustedes den sus sugerencias.
It's in rural character now, but it was platted and can develop into really a truly moderate density suburban area.
Por ahorita, de la manera que está medida, Montura es una área rural, pero en un futuro, como les estamos diciendo, en el crecimiento rápidamente al paso que vamos, puede ser una área realmente ocupada y cambios drásticos.
This is not a simple issue or simple problem to fix.
Este no es un problema muy fácil de discernir.
But we will take it step by step and adjust as we need to go. And this is the first step towards that, is by adjusting zoning and future land, or a comprehensive plan, future land use elements, so that a different mix and a different type of use can help encourage the favorite things and things that you love about Montura Ranch to stay in place instead of be slowly degraded over time as the community can grow out to almost 20,000 people.
Por ahorita lo vamos a tener que tomar paso por paso, no es algo que sucede de la noche a la mañana, sino que es algo que tenemos que enfocarnos no solamente en la zonificación, pero planear en estos elementos en un futuro de lo que vamos a poner, incluyendo las cosas favoritas de lo que la comunidad ha dicho que quiere implementar o poner en esta comunidad.
So part of that was to find out, what does the community think? So on February 29th, we had a meeting, and that was, we presented survey results, and then the majority of the meeting was a community mapping exercise.
Por ahorita, la última junta que tuvimos fue el 29 de febrero. Hicimos un ejercicio de mapeo sobre lo que las personas en la comunidad, dónde es que querían que se ubicaran estos lugares que previamente hemos mencionado.
It was done at the clubhouse, and you look at the pictures there, and it's almost funny to look at that picture now, isn't it? Then that day it was great to see 130 people gather together. Now you look at that, and we can't do that right now, which is a little bit sad and a little bit frustrating, but we'll get there again, I hope.
Como podemos apreciar en pantalla, es que esta junta se llevó a cabo el 29 de febrero en el Clubhouse, y podemos apreciar que se miran o presentes más o menos como 130 personas. Actualmente, el día de hoy, es triste decirlo, por los cambios que han sucedido, no tenemos ese conteo de esas personas presentes.
So the goal of that day was to look at several categories of land uses and ask the community where they thought these uses should be located, what kind of important things they wanted to point out. So we looked at entrances and intersections, non-residential uses such as neighborhood commercial, medical office, farmers warehouse, or farmers markets and warehousing, and then schools, parks, and conservation areas.
Por ahorita, en ese ejercicio que hicimos, él estaba pidiendo a la comunidad sobre sus sugerencias de donde diferentes categorías que eran importantes, donde querían ustedes que se colocaran esas intersecciones, esas carreteras y también centros comerciales. Y en ese ejercicio ustedes pudieron dar sus sugerencias en donde ustedes querían que se colocara.
So people looked at the map, and we asked them questions, and then they put dots, which was a vote for that area for, say, that's where I think a commercial, neighborhood commercial store would be great, and they voted with a dot. And they did that over and over again over all these different categories, and then we've come back, assembled all those together to see what were the results of the mapping exercise in general. And so I'll go over each one of those real briefly.
En la junta pasada tuvimos, se puede decir, una conferencia de mesa redonda donde los que habían asistido a esa junta pudieron dar sus sugerencias de dónde querían que se colocara esos lugares usando unos puntitos que se les dio de diferentes colores. Cuando ya se juntaron todos los resultados, ahorita vamos a detallarles cuáles fueron esos resultados, dónde fue que ustedes votaron, dónde se iban a colocar esos centros comerciales, esas escuelas, etcétera.
Some of the mentions of wanting to improve the community were some of the community entrances to be more welcoming. So we asked then, where are those entrances, and what do you consider to be the entrances to the community? Some of these questions maybe seem fairly obvious, but it's always good to ask the obvious questions so that we're all on the same page.
Una de las preocupaciones que tenía la mayoría de las personas es que les gustaría mirar que hubiera acceso o entradas a Montura, y quizás vamos a contestarle las preguntas más obvias y ahorita les vamos a explicar más detalladamente.
Now, this information of identifying where the entrances are can be used either by Henry County or the Central County Water Control District to look at those places and go, okay, how can we improve this area? How can we make these entrances noticed, special? How can we take care of the roads in those areas, maybe landscaping and different things, so we can take these areas and then look at policies or approaches to improving them.
Por ahorita las personas querían decir o dieron sus sugerencias, ¿dónde queremos estas entradas? ¿Dónde las podemos colocar? ¿Cómo va a ser un mejoramiento algo que sea especial para darle la bienvenida a las personas de fuera y, por supuesto, colocar jardinerías donde se mirara mucho más mejor el aspecto.
And we did similar response with intersections. This one was probably a little bit of a confusing question, but most people identified what we mostly thought they would, that the key intersections were most of the entrances that were identified, and then around the community clubhouse.
Por ahorita también aquí pudieron mapear o poner en el ejercicio dónde querían que se colocaran estas intersecciones.
Okay. I guess there's some questions were coming up online about how to watch this live stream. So it is on the Hendry County Facebook page, and it should pop right up in the news feed of the Hendry County Facebook page and be able to click right on that. So.
Para las personas que nos están mirando a través del internet, una pregunta que surgió es cómo pueden mirar estas fotografías que estamos mirando en pantalla. Pueden irse directamente a la página de Facebook del Condado de Henry y ahí está la liga.
Okay. The next category we looked at were the land use discussion. So there was a map and we asked people to identify certain types of uses and where they thought that would be most appropriate. This, of course, got the most responses. People are very interested in what's happening with where other uses would be placed, particularly if it's near their home or their, where you live. So we got a fair amount of responses. The majority of people placed their votes for where they feel commercial would be most appropriate. As would be an obvious place along, County Road 833 is an obvious place. So what we did was take all the dots and then look at where the clusters are and then identify those areas with clusters, and that's what the circles with the numbers are, is just the number of votes in those areas. And so what we'll look at is, in these primary areas, is it appropriate to have specific regulations that would allow for maybe lot assembly or for different development regulations that would either encourage the commercial activity to happen in that area and at the same time protect the residential units that were around those areas. So with your help, we were able to identify some consistencies as to where you feel commercial would be most appropriate and really in good use for the neighborhood.
En la última junta que tuvimos, ustedes mostraron dónde, si pueden apreciar en pantalla, donde se concentran los puntitos rojos, es donde ustedes querían que hubiera centros comerciales. Por supuesto, allí muestra los puntos de enfoque, donde están más concentrados los puntos rojos. Y también las áreas primarias donde ustedes querían que se promulgue el comercio, por supuesto, protegiendo a los residentes y algo que fuera consistente con todo el área.
So the first question is about neighborhood commercial uses, which would be like maybe your little market. It would be convenience items like gas and other services like that. The next question was just on office. So this would include medical offices. So we asked that same question: where do you think offices would be best located? And again, obviously along County Road 833 makes sense, but more of the location was around the fire station now and around the community clubhouse for this. So we'll take those into account and start looking at what has happened in this area around the clubhouse all the way out to State Route 833, what needs to happen in that area, what could be encouraged to happen in those places.
Muchas de las personas en esa junta de convocatoria mostraron que la área o punto de enfoque es en la carretera 833. Allí querían que se colocara estas marquetas y otras cosas tales como gasolinerías. Y también otra preocupación era de oficinas médicas. Igual respondieron que se colocara cerca de la estación de bomberos, cerca del clubhouse, y eran unos lugares de consideración para que se colocaran estos centros.
We asked a similar question about warehouses, and as you can see, the responses are starting to go down with these because warehousing in the survey was identified as one of those things that are not very desirable to be located anywhere, so less people wanted to vote for it to be somewhere. But yet, when they did identify the places they think it would be most appropriate, it was very similar to the commercial uses and the office uses.
Cuando se les hizo la pregunta en esa encuesta, ¿dónde querían que se establecieran esas esas fábricas o de almacén y fueron muy consistentes donde ustedes querían que se colocara esos centros comerciales.
The farmer's market was something that people really seemed to love. It came out in the survey a significant amount. So, and the clustering on this results were very clear. At the community clubhouse, nearly, almost 30 votes just around the community clubhouse, and another 15 or so down by Hunting Club Avenue and County Road 833.
Por ahorita la próxima pregunta que se les preguntó es dónde querían que se estableciera estas tienditas de Farmers Market donde se vende todo tipo de vegetales y todo eso. El punto de enfoque pueden mirar que fue en 30 votos fue cerca del Clubhouse y otros 15 fueron cerca de Huntington Club y también por la carretera 833.
Okay, and we similarly asked civic uses, questions about where those should be located, and those include things as schools, parks, and conservation areas. So the first question was on schools, and the response was pretty consistent, and although the number of responses weren't a lot, because, I mean, there's probably not quite as many families here as there probably will be in the future, but the number of the people that did respond, it was very clear that around that community clubhouse area would probably be the best place for a school location. And we asked similar stuff about parks and recreation, so, or parks and conservation areas. Oh, sorry.
La otra pregunta que se les usó es de ejemplos de dónde ustedes querían que se colocaran las escuelas, las áreas de recreación y las áreas de conservación. La mayoría, y quizás no recibimos el mismo resultado que en las otras preguntas, es porque quizás no hay tantas familias o familias ahorita de lo que esperamos que haya en un futuro. Y por ahorita todos se centraron cerca del área del Clubhouse.
So we asked the questions about parks. We separated parks and we separate from conservation. Parks, and for this purpose of the study, we described as those active areas, like the park that is around the community clubhouse. There's things with playground equipment and other active areas.
Una de las áreas donde separamos nosotros lo que es parques y el otra área de conservación, porque en los parques ustedes decidieron que querían que se manteniera ese parque activo cerca del área de recreación, cerca del clubhouse.
And of course, some of the areas identified there were around the existing, around that clubhouse area. And then southeastern area started to have some clusters down in that portion and then near the Central County Water Control District office.
Una de las áreas donde se enfocaron también para poner esas áreas de conservación o lo que ya estaba preexistente ahorita era en el sudeste y también nuevamente que fueran colocadas cerca del clubhouse.
And then the conservation areas that people conservation would be considered more passive recreation, like just trails and then preserve areas that are just meant to stay as they are and add to the rural and really vegetative nature of the area.
Las áreas de conservación, no hubo muchas respuestas en esto, simplemente querían que se mantuviera senderos o caminos, veredas donde caminar, así es que todo básicamente se quedó igual.
And of course, the reservoir is considered a conservation area, and then the other two areas were identified around the lakes near the southwestern and southeastern corners of Montura Ranch.
La área de reservación se concentró mucho más en el sudeste y al oeste, donde ustedes querían que permaneciera esa propiedad así.
So what we're going to do, that was the end of the slides on the results. Those were the mapping results and the questions that we asked. And then we have a slide here that's on the community meeting schedule that's coming up next.
Eso básicamente fue los resultados de las encuestas y también de los ejercicios de mapeo que hicimos en la junta pasada. Ahorita les vamos a hablar sobre la agenda de las juntas que se aproximan.
And then we're going to have time for questions. And so what happens next is we're going to have another meeting on November 21st.
Por ahorita vamos a abrirles para algún comentario, sugerencia y preguntas también. Y lo que va a suceder es que vamos a tener otra junta el 21 de noviembre a las 10 de la mañana.
This will be an important meeting where we jump right into what are some of the policies and regulations that we can offer that might try to help encourage what we went through today and from the survey and the other community meetings that we've had.
Esta junta les digo que es muy importante porque es donde vamos a implementar las pólizas y las regulaciones para poder ayudar sobre los ejercicios y todas las sugerencias que ustedes nos han dado.
So we'll be presenting some text and language that will address such things as where can commercial uses happen best? Where might we encourage parks and conservation areas to occur? What type of map changes do we need to make? So we're going to show that language for those overlays and those different land development code regulations.
En la próxima audiencia vamos a hablar sobre los diferentes textos y la terminología o verbaje que se va a usar, dónde es que se van a centrar esos centros comerciales, parques, áreas de conservación y cómo se van a hacer estos cambios de mapeo.
This will be in draft form, so don't think we're coming next time and then that's it. So we're going to have another meeting. In fact, we'll have 2 meetings that you'll be able to have time to review. We'll send them out early. We'll receive your input. We'll help with education and understanding about what does the language and the changes actually mean. And then we'll go back and make revisions.
Vamos a tener actualmente otra junta que van a ser 2 juntas en total, el 16 de enero, donde les vamos a hablar y vamos a dar una revisión de los diferentes lenguajes y todo lo que vamos a llevar a cabo y le vamos a mantener informado sobre los cambios.
And then early in the new year, in 2021, we'll come back together again, and that is the time that we'll be presenting language that we think is 95% complete and what we'd be moving forward to the adoption process through Hendry County.
En el 2021, al comienzo del año nuevo, les vamos a dar todo ese verbaje, todo ese lenguaje de todo lo que se va a hablar, donde ya vamos a estar al 95% completo para poder empezar a hacer los cambios.
We don't have the schedule for those public hearings yet. Those will be determined as we get a little bit closer. But our overall goal is to hopefully have the adoption process by the end of May of 2021.
Por ahorita esas audiencias públicas no tenemos la agenda preparada hasta que nos acerquemos ya más cerca de la meta que estamos mirando, quizás al fin de mayo de 2021.
All right, so that is summarizes the presentation. I mean, that's the end of the formal part of the presentation. So now I want to hear from the people here what your questions are, concerns, thoughts, and if you could, the mic's working. So if you could, so that people that are watching this live will be able to hear what you say, and I don't have to repeat every question. We have a podium there, and the mic's live. If you'll talk into that with your questions, then we'll be able to keep it all recorded.
Hemos llegado al fin de la presentación de todo lo que le tenemos para preparar. Ahora vamos a abrir el foro para que se presente. Si usted quiere pasar al frente, tenemos un micrófono que está abierto para que usted pueda dar su comentario, sugerencia o su pregunta.
And if you could, when you come up, just say your name for our purposes.
Cuando pase al frente, simplemente introdúzcase, por favor.
Good morning, Juan Mata. I live on 440 South Nogales Street. I'm the chairman for Central County Water Control District, one of the 5 board members, and we thank you for what you're doing. Question that's been asked to me, when this is finally proposed and everything and some adjustments are made, what happens with the existing landowners that are in those areas? Mm-hmm. Like, say, for instance, 833 people that have property, or where these farmers markets are want to go, what happens with the people that own property for so long, those landowners? What happens with their properties and stuff like that? Thank you.
Mi nombre es Juan Mata, vivo por la calle Nogal y soy uno de los 5 miembros. Les quiero dar las gracias por todo el trabajo que están haciendo. Actualmente hay unas preguntas que se me han hecho. ¿Qué va a hacer con las personas que ya viven en esos lugares donde se está proponiendo esos cambios?
Well, what we're not going to do is make changes to to the zoning on your piece of property. That is something that is not going to be county initiated or in any way initiated by the government.
Lo que no vamos a hacer es, si usted actualmente está viviendo en una área, algo que no nos vamos a involucrar es sobre la zonificación. Eso es un tema donde no vamos a cambiar.
While we may put some policies in that area that would allow those things to happen and specify if it did happen, how they would develop.
Por ahorita las pólizas que vamos a implementar es que si es que va a suceder, las pólizas de los cambios que vamos a poder implementar y cómo es que se va a llevar a cabo.
Any changes that would occur on the land would have to be done through the permission of the landowner.
Cualquier cosa o cualquier cambio que se vaya a llevar a cabo en su propiedad o en su terreno sería con permiso del propietario.
Does that answer? Yeah. So that keeps your your private property rights will be intact, but there could be effects with different things that would be allowed to be built near you. But that's part of what we want everybody to review in these regulations would be, do you feel if a farmer's market would be located next to your existing piece of property, is it done in a way that doesn't negatively affect you, but still allows some other things to happen? That's part of the regulations that will happen.
Parte de las regulaciones que van a suceder es que si usted es un propietario y va a existir un cambio, vamos a implementar pólizas donde si se llegara a poner un centro comercial de cualquier índole al lado de su propiedad, que a usted se le respete sus derechos de propietario privado. Al mismo tiempo se le va a informar qué cambio se va a hacer y cómo es que le puede afectar.
Good morning. My name is Rolly Gonzalez, 825 North Breda. I'm a resident of Montura.
Buenos días, el señor González, vivo en la 825 Breda.
Many concerns that the residents have over there is once you're coming in and you want to develop, are they going to continue their rural lifestyle? Meaning, are they going to be able to continue having their chickens, their goats? And is there going to be a limit on that? Because I believe the past 2 meetings that we've had, we have not talked about limitations, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. So that is certainly going to be a
Por
part.
ahorita,
Oh, go
pardon
ahead,
me.
sorry.
Por ahorita, la pregunta del señor es sobre en esa dirección que estaba hablando él, las personas que actualmente están viviendo de una manera rural, que tienen sus granjas, ya sea de pollos, de chivos, o si existe algún límite que le van a poder poner en esas propiedades. Por ahorita, en las últimas 2 juntas pasadas, no se ha especificado si va a haber alguna limitación.
Addressing animals, animal care, and animal number by parcel size, by use, is going to be addressed for sure in those regulations. So Henry County's addressed some of it I believe it was in January, where they eliminated the use of commercial use of animals on residential property in Montura. But they didn't restrict or address limits on number of animals, specific types of animals based on parcel size for domestic use. So we are going to. Oh, sorry.
Pardon me. Por ahorita, sí hemos hablado un poco sobre el cuidado de animales y cuánta la cantidad de animales que usted puede tener, dependiendo en el tamaño de su parcela, su lote o terreno. En enero creo que tuvimos en esa junta donde se eliminó el uso comercial en su terreno residencial. Vamos a hablar un poquito más en esas regulaciones, va a establecer el límite de animales y el cuidado que se puede tener en su terreno.
So we'll be looking at what types of animals are appropriate, based on the use of your property now, like is it residential or is it commercial? We'll be looking at what number of animals are appropriate based on parcel size, and then having some addressing to some extent good animal care practices, and which will just really not only the health and safety of residents, but then the health and safety of the animals that are on that piece of property.
Por ahorita vamos a hablar sobre los diferentes tipos de animales que van a ser apropiados que a usted se le permita tener en esa área, ya sea residencial o comercial, y también cuántos animales va a ser una buena cantidad de que usted pueda mantener en esas propiedades. No solamente incluyendo que usted pueda tener buen cuidado de esos animales, pero al igual que no le afecte a sus vecinos. También vamos a tomar en cuenta el bienestar y la salubridad de la comunidad y diferentes aspectos de tamaños de parcela y los animales que usted pueda tener.
So next meeting, we'll have a draft text of that to review, and we'll send it out early.
En la junta próxima vamos a tener más información sobre eso textualmente.
Thank you. And one last concern that many have raised as well. We are a rural community. Now, as we continue to develop, are we going to be having any type of regulations on the trees that are being knocked down? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people coming in, they're clearing up all the trees. And are we going to be able to regulate any type of trees, such as oak trees, that make Montura as beautiful as it is?
Por ahorita, una preocupación que tenemos también pendiente es que ahorita estamos sonados como una área rural y mientras se está desarrollando este plan que están tratando de llevar a cabo, me estoy refiriendo más a los árboles, porque por ahorita hay muchos árboles, más en particular oak, que se están tumbando. Por ahorita están viniendo personas que simplemente están limpiando el área y quiero saber a ver si va a haber algún tipo de regulación.
So up until this point, I don't know that we've really considered like landscaping or tree preservation ordinances in this area, but it is something that we can look at with staff and, look at some draft language for that. Particularly if it's a concern to the residents, we would like to be able to address it in these updates if that's something that residents are concerned about.
Si por ahorita está llevando a cabo que se está preocupando la comunidad sobre esa jardinería y cómo es que se están limpiando estas áreas de los árboles, quizás en las próximas juntas que tengamos podemos tener un tipo de, textualmente podemos escribir algo y tener algún tipo de reglamento.
I think a lot of times some of the language that gets used for that is encouraging people to keep trees rather than forcing them to not be able to, or to not remove trees, because sometimes just the way the property needs to be developed or the grading or just all kinds of issues that there may not be able to keep some trees to be kept, but we could look at some language that would encourage people in some way, incentivize them keeping certain trees, because I agree, some of the trees are, it's beautiful and some of the trees are great.
Algún tipo de verbaje que podemos incluir, perdón, en la próxima audiencia, en la junta, es de que incluya un tipo de lenguaje donde se les aliente que mantengan esos árboles en vez de tumbarlos y que se tumben solamente cuando sea necesario. Pero creo que la mayoría de la gente está más alientado por guardar ese follaje.
Yes, at the end of the day, many people want to make it as beautiful as possible. If you want to keep it rural, we want to keep that as many trees as possible. That's one of their concerns as well. They don't want to make it into a city. They want to make it as rural as possible, but beautifying it at the same time. Thank you.
Al fin del día lo que queremos hacer es guardar a Montura a un lugar bello donde vivir y no poblarlo. Guardarlo y al guardar los árboles sería mantener una área rural.
Good morning. My name is Denise Miller, and I am a supervisor at Central County Control Water District.
Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Denise Miller. Soy la manager del Central Control Water District.
Supervisor.
La supervisora, perdón. Supervisora.
I am concerned with the answer given a few minutes ago when asked the amount of animals per acre. I was one of the people there that asked Ms. Margaret Elrich about that. And according to her, and she was filmed, she said that the amount of animals present in Montura would not be a concern, was going to stay the same. And now I'm hearing from you.
Por ahorita tengo una preocupación sobre la respuesta que se dio hace ratito, sobre la cantidad de animales que uno puede guardar en su propiedad, en su terreno. La vez pasada hablé directamente con la señora Eldridge y tocante lo que me dijo ella, y todo estaba siendo grabado, es la cantidad de animales que usted puede tener actualmente en su propiedad.
She didn't say it to me personally, she said it in public
No me lo dijo a mí personalmente, me lo dijo en público
at that meeting.
en esa junta.
So now I'm hearing something else.
Ahora estoy escuchando algo diferente.
Yeah, I remember her saying that, and so we've had discussions back and forth based on the survey and all the different results. We've seen desires for that. Of course, there's the other side of people desiring to not change the numbers, but we're going to look at the whole scope of what, by animal care and by protection of each other's property, what makes the most sense, and present it. And then if it is something that that is greatly objected to, then, I mean, we're here for you. So until we put that out and really look at it a little bit better, and this will be in the next month, so it isn't going to be a long time, I wouldn't be overly concerned, because it is going to be something we can look at and talk through.
Por ahorita sí me recuerdo haber tenido una conferencia con ella, una discusión con ella sobre los diferentes resultados que habíamos recibido. Habíamos dicho que los números no iban a cambiar, pero mirando todo en general, vamos a tener que tomar en cuenta el cuidado y la protección no solamente de los animales, sino de la propiedad. Y como se me presentó es, si muchas personas se oponen a que este cambio se lleve a cabo, estamos aquí para ayudarle a la comunidad.
I believe that she addressed that also. And she said that the numbers, the zoning of Montura was going to stay the same as it was, with no limits, and that if a resident had something going on with their animals, too many animals, or not taking care of the animal, other agencies will address that with that resident.
Creo que ella sí se dirigió sobre ese punto de zonificación la vez pasada, donde ella dijo específicamente que no iba a haber o no iban a existir límites. También dijo que si algún residente en la propiedad tenía demasiados animales o alguna preocupación, esa agencia protectora de animales se iba a dirigir a ese propietario específicamente.
Good morning, guys. My name is Louis Napoles. I'm a supervisor for Central County. Most of my questions has been answered already, except for one.
Buenos días, mi nombre es, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your full name.
I'm sorry?
I didn't hear your full name, I'm sorry.
My name?
Yes.
Luis Napoles.
My name is Luis Napoles, and I'm a supervisor of Central County, and I think all of my questions have been answered except one. Oh, I'm sorry, I said it in English. I apologize.
Yo creo que es mejor que yo lo diga.
Buenos días a todos, perdón. Mi nombre es Rudy Nápoles, soy el supervisor de Central County, y por ahorita creo que todas mis preguntas han sido contestadas con el excepto de una. Siga.
Okay. The question is grandfather law of the people. There are not many businesses established in Montura at the present time, but some of those businesses may fall into a residential new zoning. Is the grandfather laws going to be applicable to those people that be able to stay there? And if they are allowed to stay there, what's going to happen if they want to sell the business? Is it going to be the grandfather law is going to end, or that area will still consider a business?
Por ahorita mi única pregunta que tengo es si actualmente una persona está zonificada ahorita o ahora, como dicen, en una zona de negocio, ¿qué pasa si van a implementar estos cambios? Ahora, si yo soy uno de esos dueños de esa propiedad y algún día decido vender mi propiedad que estoy actualmente usando para negocio, ¿lo van a cambiar o van a aplicar, perdón, esas mismas leyes que previamente el dueño tenía antes?
So right now in the Land Development Code, I don't think we specifically address grandfathered uses. I know that we do address non-conforming uses or non-conforming structures, which essentially means that something was legally built and legal use at some point, but is no longer allowed technically by code. It can be considered a non-conforming structure or non-conforming use. So with this update, it is probably something that we're going to have to address, but we haven't hammered out any language specifically for that yet.
But what she's saying, non-conforming uses have rights to continue in most cases as long as they don't, over time, increase the nonconformity. So there are limitations, but non-conforming uses do have some rights. But we'd have to look at specific cases to see if it was ever legally permitted. And so there's a lot of details that would be underneath it, but for the most part, non-conforming uses do have rights to continue.
Por ahorita vamos a dirigirnos específicamente sobre ese tema, sobre uso de la persona que haya tenido esa propiedad antes. Existen reglas ahorita actualmente que no hemos establecido y por lo tanto tendremos que regresarnos y revisar si esa persona estableció ese negocio legalmente, quizás lo pueda seguir continuando de tener, pero quizás pueda existir limitaciones, pero eso es algo que vamos a tener que hablar más detalladamente.
I totally agree with what you said, but you haven't answered my question.
No creo que usted haya contestado mi pregunta.
Grandfather law, is it going to be applicable to the people that have the business?
Yeah,
La ley-
Yes or no?
La ley de establecimiento previo, ¿usted va a seguir en efecto, sí o no?
Yeah, grandfather law is not a land development code term, so I think the best thing of how to address that really clearly would be to call Margaret Emlich, to talk with her and talk about specifically what you're going after, and maybe a good example of that you're talking through, that you want to talk through, because I think there's terms that I can't really address like that.
Por ahorita la
Grandfather.
ley a la que se está refiriendo la grandfather, una ley previamente existente o establecida, quizás tiene algunos códigos que yo no le puedo contestar esa pregunta sin antes consultar con Margaret Emlich y poder hablar con ella para darle una mejor respuesta.
All right, for the record, I don't think it's going to be right for the changes to affect an established business that has been paying taxes for X amount of time. So I deeply request that you guys really pay attention to this. I would hate to see a citizen of Montura lose his effort and his money, income, and everything just because of a zoning change. Thank you very much.
Por ahorita yo creo que esos cambios, no estoy de acuerdo con esos cambios, porque creo que una persona que ha estado pagando sus impuestos previamente como negocio, y le quiero enfatizar encarecidamente que no quisiera que lleven a cabo esos cambios para esos negocios y que presten atención, porque no me gustaría que ningún ciudadano de Montura pierda sus derechos, su dinero y su esfuerzo a lo que ellos han invertido.
Well, good. I don't see anybody else coming up for questions, so I really appreciate you guys spending time on your Saturday, caring about your community, and really wanting to be part of this. Your questions and what you were brought up today, we'll absolutely consider. We'll revisit, and we'll go through as we look at the text and the things that we bring forward at the next meeting.
Por ahorita les queremos, perdón, dar las gracias por ahorita no miramos que alguna otra persona pase a que tenga alguna preocupación o pregunta. Les queremos dar las gracias por haber invertido su sábado y dar sus comentarios para apoyo de su comunidad. Y vamos a tomar todas sus sugerencias, sus preguntas, van a ser debidamente consideradas y los vamos a tener algo por texto en nuestra próxima junta.
And on the last page here is the stay informed piece, gives some of the links and the places to go for the information and this presentation and the prior presentations. Also at the bottom there is the number, and it goes to Margaret Emblich, who's the Community Development and Planning Director for Hendry County. So she said reach out to her directly. And then the Montura Study Gmail, I respond to and then forward to Hendry County Planning and make sure that we're all in the same loop. So if you have a request, you can email there, and I look at that on a weekly basis. So I thank you again for everybody attending here live and watching online. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Nuevamente les agradecemos y en la penúltima página tenemos toda la información donde usted se puede mantener informado. Tenemos aquí el número de teléfono de la señora Margaret Emblich, si usted se quiere comunicar con ella. Al igual, se puede comunicar conmigo a través de ese sitio de internet. Tengo mi correo electrónico allí. Les damos las gracias nuevamente.
This presentation and all of the information is also on the county's website, under public information, I believe.
Esta información, esta presentación también es público para la persona que lo quiera revisar públicamente. Esta presentación y todas las previas juntas están publicadas en el sitio de internet.
Thank you.
Gracias.